And I'm here with my co-hosts, Rich Ross and Andy Schwam. And the way to differentiate the two co-hosts is that I've never mispronounced Rich Ross's name, but I used to, for the very longest time, say Andy Schwam. I mean, for years I did Andy, and then we even came on this show, and I was like, isn't it Schwam like Schwammy, like no Schwammy, stop. And now every time we start the show, I actually go in my head and say, okay, it's not Schwammy. So the only other thing it could possibly be is Schwam. So my co-host Andy Schwam, how you doing tonight?
You're killing me. We're back to this old joke again. I mean, you totally caught me off guard with that. I am doing well. I'm doing well, hanging in there. I don't know, super busy these days, and I don't know. It's sort of busy sometimes. You know what? Busy beats COVID to some degree. Like when I'm busy, I'm not thinking about how like, oh man, I haven't left the house, and like I'm just busy. So I guess that's good.
Yeah. And Rich, how's everything looking sound? I think you're looking around over there to make sure we're actually live and little things like that.
Yeah, making sure the audio is where it is. That we're doing a slightly different setup where we're letting our streaming box just do streaming, and we have an account there that is logged into a Skype session that now has four of us, one for each of us, and then one for an account over there. So different setup. Everything all appears to be working. Music played nicely. Might have been a little late coming in with your intro, but other than that, I think we're good.
Yeah,
I was doing a good job.
Imagine, right? That live TV usually happens in a studio where somebody right in front of you can tell you how things are going. And we're doing this from separate locations, in separate rooms, separate equipment, just meshing it all together. And you know what? That's the magic of it. And I know that those of you joining us, we're just having some fun. So thank you very much for being here, whether you are watching live right now on Twitch or on YouTube live right now, or if you're watching in the future, which means that you're on YouTube, then definitely glad that you are joining us. And what do I always say when you're watching from the future? I say, let us know who wins the Super Bowl, which is coming up. So it's never been more relevant. I'm certainly not going to turn this into a sports talk show, although one of our co-hosts might have something to say about that a little bit later. I don't want to put you on the spot now, but we could. I hear there's some awesome videos about the draft that you might want to bring up later tonight. Maybe we'll talk about it at the end. But I'm hearing could possibly be quarterback battle for the ages coming up in a couple Sundays, maybe of all time. So we'll stop there and talk about. Unless any of you are like, yeah, man, the game, awesome. So.
Football, I would have liked to seen the Bills win personally. I thought that would have been kind of fun. Tom Brady in another Super Bowl does not excite me.
Do you feel like you've seen that before?
Well, it's a different team. I mean, but yeah, sure, we've seen it before, right? It's like it is unbelievable, this guy's career. I mean, it's unbelievable.
So, do you know this stat about Tom Brady, which I read recently, is that he's played 19 seasons. And so, there's plenty of players who play 19 seasons and never go to the playoffs, never go to the Super Bowl. Tom Brady has played in 9 seasons where he has not played in the Super Bowl. This will be his 10th season where he plays in the Super Bowl. That's ridiculous.
It's insane. Yeah.
He's played 10. He's going to be in his 10th Super Bowl, and only, when I say only, missed it 9 times, like as if, how many times did they lose in the AFC Championship? And forget all the guys who play entire careers and don't sniff the playoffs. Like, just amazing. So, anyways, this is the Dev Talk Show, and
sports
not
talk
football
show.
draft.
we were going to follow up a little bit. If you're here joining us, we were going to follow up a little bit on what we talked about last week. Mike Shea says the MLS draft. And you know what? Maybe we'll talk about it later, Andy. It's totally up to you. And of course, we all know that the joke about how the New York teams aren't really in New York, right? So last week we talked about SignalR. And Kevin Griffin was here. And it was really cool because we got to discuss his real live working app that was working right in front of us, and about the choices they made, and why would you. It was really fair about why does his app want to use the Redis cache? Why would your app possibly might want to use it too, or you might want to use the Azure SignalR service? We didn't concentrate too much on what changed from the .NET Framework SignalR, because I think for the most part that's well behind us, unless you're one of the folks who is maintaining an app like that, which is pretty heroic, right? I mean, somebody's got to maintain legacy code. I've certainly done it, and I don't even like using that word legacy because people associate it with like, oh, that's bad. No, it's working code,
working
right?
code. Yep.
Working code is
Working
valuable.
code. Yeah, I think if people are tuning in now or watching this on YouTube, if you have any interest in SignalR, like I can't plug that last week's show enough, and I'm not bragging about us, right?
Yeah,
Kevin delivered. I mean, he really got into stuff about the thought process and decisions you need to make on some of the real world, but not so far-fetched. Like, these weren't real world, like, oh, this is never going to happen to you scenarios. These are legitimate scenarios. And, anyone who's going to do SignalR, I think, should watch that show on our YouTube channel and honestly, possibly take Kevin's course, because he was plugging a course, and I don't mind saying that he's got although I don't remember the URL right now, if anybody has it, he's got a course on Udemy called SignalR
Mastery.
Oh, Mastery, SignalR Mastery, right? Seems like be money well spent. It was only like $20 too. It's like, oh God,
Yeah, right.
Ancient Coders here. Hey.
Yeah, so one of the things that we, like anybody watching the replay of the show is going to look and say like, yeah, I can't wait to click that link sitting on the screen. So really it's the folks in the chat who got the best of it. And then I think, as Ancient Coder's pointing out, I think that Kevin himself has hosting that at signalrmastery.com, which is cool.
That's it. That's easy to remember.
Yeah. So the reason we're here is because there are some other features in the Azure cloud that would let us build an application. We're not going to set up IIS. We're not going to set up a web server. We're not going to set up Nginx. So I guess we're trying to use that serverless buzzword. But there's no reason that you couldn't have a static website that connects to a SignalR hub. That hub could be hosted by Azure SignalR service, and you're not managing any servers. And I think it's possible that we might also see a little Azure Functions. I kind of hedged on that in the tweets, because I said, well, what if we don't get to it? But whatever. Maybe the Azure Functions team will retweet that anyway. So.
So now you're just like, it's all clickbait at this point.
Right. Yeah, the tweet is more links and hashtags than it is content anymore.
Tonight on the Dev Talk Show, building Excel and Excel SharePoint and like what else?
Right, with Power Platform.
Power Platform and Football Draft. So
less code, more power.
Because we can.
Yeah, right. So how do we get started here? We and it's actually I wanna say, Ancient Coder is putting pearls up in the chat. So somebody watching this later they should benefit from this too. But he is saying that if you use signalrmastery.com, that if Kevin is the referrer, then you get a discount. I think that's what that means. So
that's pretty sweet.
Yeah. So that's the link. That's the link you want to use. So awesome. Thanks for that. Thanks for that information there, Ancient Coder. That's really appreciated. All right. So what do we talk about here, Rich? Do we have and this is going to sound, this just shows you how well rehearsed this is. Do we have a diagram to look at or anything? Or are we going to talk through what the architecture of this idea is?
No, and maybe this might be an opportunity to, I don't know if you have your little whiteboard handy or that tablet that you were using, handy. I actually, what I would use for a tablet, I just flipped around so I could look for notes because I'm down to one screen in the office here. But yeah, the idea is that I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, right? If we take some of the conversation we had last week around SignalR and maybe, kind of dovetail some of the conversation we started to have a couple weeks ago around APIs, and serverless being a good place where we can put APIs. Can we, what can we do to kind of show those kind of technologies together, right? How much infrastructure do we have to put in place? So I think what we're looking to do here, and let me see if I can share my browser so you can see that one.
You're going to see me grab that tablet in a second. It'll be like the Great Escape. Or maybe you won't see me because we'll be sharing.
Drive Dex, Bueller. We are, figuring it out, and hang in there with us for a minute while we figure out what the heck we're doing. And it's not easy. Rich is scrambling here as he's trying to figure out. Rich is in the driver's seat today in terms of like hosting the stream. He's got OBS running and he's got Skype over there, and he's trying to get these scenes together. And sometimes Skype just
while you're filibustering, and this is awesome for you to do that, here's what I'm going to do. Since I'm all local on the same machine, I'm going to take a couple minutes, spin up NDI on my machine, go and have that be an NDI source on OBS. And then we don't have to worry about Skype screen share. We can put all the cameras back where they were, and life should be fine. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll just chat. Are we going to lose the stream while you're doing this?
No. It's all good. Okay. So yeah, chat. If you guys can chat for a few minutes while I figure that out, you guys will be all set.
So this is where. So let me tell you. I'll tell you a story here. Can I go to a non-technical story here? When I was in college, and just after college, I worked in a movie theater. And at some points, I was eventually the manager of the movie theater and stuff like that. And so in those days, film and movie theaters was film. And sometimes the film would break. And I don't know if you guys remember that, if you're old enough to have been at the movie theater. You'd see some stuff go by on the screen and you go, oh gosh, the film broke. Well, the managers and the staff, we would run around like crazy because I also worked the equipment. I was a projectionist and all that kind of stuff. So we basically, one of us would have to go down to the audience. And this is probably where I learned to speak in front of crowds pretty well. One of us would have to go down in front of 400 people and say, well, sorry, the film broke. and we're watching up in that window, that window up in the top of the movie theater, and we're looking for the projectionist to wave down and say, like, I'm getting it fixed, but it's taking them a minute or two. And we had to stall. Like, this was our time to stall. So we started doing stuff like, anybody wants to come down and tell a joke, family, nice clean joke or something like that, free tickets to the movie next weekend, to a movie of your choice or whatever. Or we'd play Let's Make a Deal. Anybody who's got in those days, a matchbook or a penny with a certain year on it, whatever, and you get free tickets. And we would just like stall. We would just kill time. And this is kind of reminding me of that. And I know this is, we could spend this time talking about probably SignalR or something like that, but I'm just reminiscing to the old days. Chris, I don't know. What do you think?
The very first movie that I remember the film breaking on, I don't know if you'll find, I remember what movie it was, and I remember being in the theater, and it was a movie that in those days we called Star Wars. There were no other titles. Nobody called it A New Hope or whatever. Yeah, and it was actually the first time I'd ever seen it as well. And it was right when, this is crazy that I remember this. This is right when Luke looked through, a Star Wars fan, which includes me, is going to be upset that I'm not remembering. I'm going to call them binoculars and not what their actual name was, right? The rangefinder. And he was looking through there. He saw the banthas, and that's when it broke.
And you remember it that clearly.
Yeah, I remember it really clearly. It was the first time I was ever seeing Star Wars. The whole place, I mean, it was pretty tense.
Wow. Yeah.
Because now, granted, this wasn't first run, because I'm certainly got plenty of gray, but I did not see Star Wars for the first time on its first run. And so there were plenty.
I did.
Yeah. I was a little young. I was alive, but it would have been a little young. So there were plenty of veterans. I don't mean, Star Wars veterans.
Veterans in Star Wars.
Just upset that, like, how could you possibly? And it's like, looking back on it, it's like, well, you've seen it. I mean, I'm the one who hasn't seen the movie yet. So, yeah, that was. And then I worked in a movie theater as well. And I worked at a theater when Jurassic Park came out. And the reason I'm picking on this is it was the beginning of the end. That Jurassic Park for me marked the beginning of the end of movies on film as we know it. Now, the movie itself was still shipped on film, but there was a brand new audio system called DTS where the audio was shipped on a DVD. And there was a time code on the reel that told the DTS machine what to play, and it would always stay in sync. And the reason why that was the beginning of the end is that was in 93-ish time frame. Somebody will go check me on when Jurassic Park came out. And, it wasn't more than 10 years later that just about every movie theater had switched to full digital projection. It couldn't have been more than 10 years. And so movies breaking in that same fashion, never again. Now they just break in new and exciting ways. So.
Well, now we don't have movie theaters to go to.
We just don't have movie theaters. Or if you went to a movie theater, the days of building well-spec'd movie theaters were long gone. You watch them in closets that are not very well insulated with audio. You can hear the movie next door. The projectionist probably hasn't. The usher probably hasn't changed the bulb in the digital projector for a while, so the colors aren't right. But who's complaining? Let's talk about. I think Rich sitting there tells me that we can talk about SignalR and the SignalR service. I think that's what that means.
I think that's what that means.
So wait, this isn't a show about movies.
No.
Or football.
Well, we stalled some time. So yeah, like getting back on track, SignalR, and we're gonna try. Rich was gonna try to share his screen.
Yeah.
Yes.
See, Chops worked in a movie theater too. I worked at the Brea Marketplace in California, which was a pretty darn decent theater. It wasn't the Irvine Spectrum, but it was nice.
It was so much fun working in a movie theaters. We used to have parties at night. We'd show the movies at midnight and popcorn. And it was a good time. I had a lot of friends. I still have a lot of friends from that many, many years ago when I worked there. I'm just, again, still stalling as Rich is trying to maybe share his screen.
Just resizing my screen because it was never meant to be that small. So let's do this. Let's do form. And there we go. Now through the magic of video.
Suit coat.
Yes.
Yeah, our just wore vests, but I know what you mean. Yeah, you had to dress up. I don't even think they wear t-shirts now at the movie theaters. I don't know what they were, but yeah, we had uniforms, bow ties.
United
Nice.
Artists, right? That was United Artists.
The
Well,
bow
I worked
ties.
at a bunch of different ones. I worked at we all had. I think everyone had
Yeah, it's probably
bow
true.
ties in those days.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, look, Rich has got a screen up here, Visual Studio Code.
Studio
And
Code.
I can see the three of us. So things are coming up Millhouse. This is great.
They are going well. Yes. All right. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to. We did a little bit of. So we talked about the. Let's talk about the things that we're going to include inside of the solution, right? So we're going to include SignalR because that's the topic we talked about last week with Kevin. And while I think Kevin, for the most part, talked about SignalR as being part of your web app and being part of that infrastructure, we're actually going to use SignalR service. And to save on time, and boy, is that looking out to be some good thought process walking into this. To save some time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this and show this is a resource group for my Azure subscription. And you can see here that we've already gone ahead and created this, which is our demo environment for our SignalR service. So just basically, new SignalR service in Azure. Didn't do anything fancy with it. It is basically your run-of-the-mill SignalR capabilities inside of the Azure space, right? Questions on it? You guys are all. I can't. So I'm down to the one screen. I can't see video. I can't see if you guys have questions. So
yeah.
I'm gonna go a little. Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to configure my screen a little bit to make it bigger for me because I don't think you're sharing through Skype. And that would probably take Skype down. Like, we don't want to mess with that, I think, right?
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
No, I see it. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay. So the Azure SignalR service, that's what that is.
Yep. And we're going to use this. We're going to basically create a couple things. We're going to create essentially a static web page.
Maybe
so
hit
HTML
Control
page.
plus a couple times so we can. It's kind of small even on the video. Yeah. All right. Cool. Yep.
Yeah. So so this is already existing. That's great. We've got that to go. And then we're going to create two other things. We're going to create a static HTML page, and that's going to have the JavaScript for doing what is probably the one app we didn't see last week, which is that chat app. So this is a chat interface essentially. So it's the classic SignalR set of demos, and we'll use to make all the communication happen. Since we have a static web page, well, what's that going to call into for to talk to those services? It's going to talk to an Azure function app, and that function app will have a couple of you'll see it'll have a couple of APIs that we're going to call. One will do the authentication. The other one will do the message passing back and forth. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So serverless, right? We're not going to own a VM.
We're not going to own a VM. We don't have any app services that we can say I need 10 of these or need 100 of these. The Azure function is just going to basically deploy enough instances to support the workload of requests that come in on this service, essentially, right? So we've already gone ahead. We created the service. One thing we did do in setting this up is if we look at the settings page, we actually made this be a serverless model as well. So if we think about and I know we talked about SignalR service on a previous show, and maybe if we're ambitious enough in post, we'll go ahead and put the link in the corner up here on the right. The idea is that the SignalR service needs to be able to talk back to that app service or that virtual machine, as Chris mentioned, to be able to know where that traffic is coming from. Because we don't have that and we have a serverless function, there is a serverless mode that will let our SignalR service run against that instead of requiring us to stand up a web server or an app service in Azure.
So there's different modes.
Mm-hmm.
Classic says to me, this is how the service came out, but maybe you shouldn't use this anymore. Am I right?
Yeah, they've done some enhancements to the SignalR service. So yeah, classic would be yeah. So it even tells you don't do this. Yeah. So
okay, and then so you've got default and serverless is a mode. You can't have any hub server. Comparing it to default mode, clients don't require hubs, and you're using serverless. Interesting. Huh. So this is not last week. I just want to level set this for. I understand this is a little. Sometimes on the show we're super basic. Today we're certainly expecting. You're probably going to know C#. Maybe you've even had some experience with SignalR, hosted on your own app, stuff like that. And today, since we're using the service, this is new to me, Rich. This serverless mode. When I'm reading here that it says that you don't have a hub server, does that mean that the hub abstraction that we're all so fond of is altered in some way? Or no?
Yeah, that's what
I guess we're going to find out.
We're going to find out. It's a good question because we do when we go through the code, we certainly do refer to. We basically point to the hub name essentially, just like you would classically. So
the hub. Sorry, just level setting again for me. Is the hub is the part that if you have, maybe I'll get this wrong. I know there's a mode where in old mode, maybe not what we're doing today, if you're running SignalR on more than one server, the hub is the thing that keeps them synchronized?
That's the backplane.
Oh, that's the backplane.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
So the hub is the abstraction of clients, web pages, or other apps connect to hubs, and then your C# code, you build a hub. It's derived off of hub, and you expose functions that can be called from the client code, and vice versa. Hubs can call client code functions.
Okay, and we're doing this without
the hub is like the heart of the abstraction. So I'm going to be, I might be reading too much when it says there is a mode that you cannot have any hub server. I'm just going to ignore that. Let's see what this means practically.
Right.
We've set it as serverless.
Yep. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and let's give ourselves a new, yeah, that does work. Cool. We're going to give ourselves a new location for this. So this is our, let's do a directory for SignalR demo. Yep. And I'm just going to go ahead and launch an instance of code.
And curious if anybody's watching, if anybody's, I know people are watching right now because I see the chat. Has anybody tried? Is this new for everybody? Has anybody done this before? I'm just curious. It's certainly new for us.
Yeah, I haven't used SignalR.
Yeah.
Okay. And I guess that newness also goes into something we have here in, hey, we're going to go ahead and actually create an Azure function, right? And we're doing that. You can certainly do it through Studio. For me, when I'm doing a function project, it just seems to, just seems much more natural to work
code experience. Code. Yeah.
Yep.
There's also a CLI experience, like there's an Azure function CLI. I think the command line is like func. You type. So it's funky, I guess. But besides that, and it really wasn't meant to be a joke. It's just that there is another way. You can say func new, and it builds it for you. And then I guess you could go into code, or you could go into any IDE, anything you like. Doesn't even have to be it could be writer or something.
Right. So, I mean, that's the beauty of it, right? Because the Azure or the function runtime essentially it's open source. So
yeah. So I imagine there were some extensions you had to install to get this done, especially if we're waiting for it to fire up. An Azure Functions extension, and then maybe some more.
Yeah. So let's go back over here. So if we look at our extensions, we can look and see what's installed, and you have a lot in here for what we've been doing. But the important one here is this one, which is our Functions extension.
Okay.
The other one, and we'll see this in a little bit because we'll need it for the tutorial, is the live server extension. So that's what's going to give us when we do our debugging locally. That is what will give us the ability to connect to from that static page.
Cool. Yeah, I use live server too. I especially use it when I talk about like kids or something that have VS Code live server. Boom, you're up and running with static websites.
Yeah.
So what is that? Is live server, is that like a mock server kind of thing? Or?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
you by default, if you do nothing more than start live server, it just takes whatever folder you're in Visual Studio Code and just exposes it as if it was on a web server. So really,
Okay.
really quick way to kind of just up and running. Here's, HTML, CSS being served.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
cool.
It's another good one. Another good tip.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, Chris, you've had some experience with that with some of the coding
Yep.
hackathons you've done with kids. So
Yep.
those have gone really well having those capabilities in there. So this is essentially my subscription, my sandbox subscription that is the same place where my SignalR server that we just looked at is in. I'm going to go ahead and you can do this a couple ways. We could go here and say, give me a new project, or we can certainly go through and do the command palette, depending on what your preference is, and look for Azure function and say, create new project. So that's what we're going to do here. What's the location? We're going to say, yep, we're going to use the location we've got. In this case, we're kind of working, I would typically use C#. That's the way I typically roll. But for this one, we're going to do as JavaScript.
Okay.
And we're going to create a brand new function that is an HTTP function. We're going to give it essentially our name. And in this case, we're going to make this one, I always make sure I spell that right. We're going to give it a name of negotiate. And the reason we're doing that is that we want to be able to, there's going to be two functions that we call. One is going to do the authentication piece for us, which is this negotiate function. And then the other one is going to be the one where the messages roll through. So that is, let me see. Actually, let's skip that for now. Hang on. Let's hold that thought. So I'm just going to go ahead and create the project. But one of the things I'm going to do, Chris, you talked about some of the add-ins and things that we have in place. One of the add-ins I'm going to do is I need to get a NuGet package for my interesting.
So there's a NuGet package you have to get, and that's going to be different for us veterans of Visual Studio who just go to the manage NuGet packages, right click, right?
Yes, it's a little bit of a. I mean, I like it.
Interesting. So you are using the command line here, and this is to install a package. Okay.
Yep.
So there's that func CLI. Do you know? Did that come? Was that installed with the Azure Functions extension for Visual Studio Code?
I believe it was. I don't remember.
All right.
I know I had that in there, and in running through, because I did run through this demo once, I didn't have to install anything else to make that work.
What do you mean run through this? We're not making it up on the fly?
I wish we could. At the end, we'll show you where we got this from. You guys can try it as well. But yeah, sometimes we're just not that bright this late at night, or leaving those things to chance this late at night. Extension bundles configured in, so apparently it says it already has. Interesting. Okay.
Okay, it already had that.
Yeah. All right, we'll go with it.
All right, cool.
We'll find out in a minute. I want to just see. Yeah, that was the right one. Yep. All right, we did have two separate names for this. Okay. So it says it's there. We'll let it run. All right. Don't you just love when it throws you a curve like that? All right, so now we're going to go back and create that function that we were looking to do before, right? We're going to make it an HTTP trigger. So think of a RESTful endpoint or an API endpoint that we're going to use, or we're going to talk to. And again, we're going to call this one negotiate. And we're going to make it anonymous, right? We don't want to have any authentication take place when someone goes and talks to that particular service.
Now negotiates, we're calling it that, but that's not super important. It's just the name, I guess.
Yes.
Okay.
Interesting. No action performed extension bundle is configured. and that's not what we want the SignalR server. So I don't see that in here in the proxies, the package, or the host settings. Kind of where it should be. All right, let's try that again. Yeah. All right. This is going to be a real short demo if that doesn't work. Let's try this.
You know, Rich, we can always go back to talking about movie theaters and football drafts, so we got it covered. Whatever you need.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate it.
I don't know if that's
Go ahead.
all right. So
Oh. Look at this.
when they say extension bundle,
Yeah. So there's the basic set of commands you get with a function. And then in order to make bindings to some other things besides HTTP triggers or have a timer in there, when you want to connect that to other services like a Cosmo database or blob storage or any of the other things that an Azure function can connect to for binding either in or out, then what you do is you basically bring in the appropriate extension that you need to make that connection. So you've got a framework, if you will, for adding extensions, but I only need to bring the ones I need for my project. I don't need to bring in all, however many are out there that we connect to with an Azure function. It just gives me the ability to say, and keep my packages small and say, I only need to connect to SignalR for this function. And that's all. And that's what I would bring in. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. I didn't know what that meant there, so cool.
Mm-hmm. This is
Contrived's asking about package.json. Is it listed in package.json?
nope.
So that's something.
Yeah, I mean it's not getting in there, and
All right.
next perform. Let's try this. This is a bash command. If I do func. So Chris, this is going to the for the CLI core. This is the Azure Function Core Tools, and the extensions is the one that we're looking at. So let's do that.
Hey, Rich, sorry to interrupt. Can you increase the font on your terminal? I just think people would be able to follow along. Yeah, thanks.
No, appreciate that. We can install an appropriate package. And for us, we're doing the extension package, we're doing the version, and that's all we really need.
So this is the joys of live coding, right? This is something we don't always do on this show, but many live streamers do this. We've all done it independently, and we don't do it much on this show. So for people that are watching, this might seem a little strange, but this is sort of a different, this is just working through code. And Rich, I don't mean to interrupt. I'm just talking while you're
Please,
filibusters. This is I'm the filibuster, I guess. This must be my job here. But live coding is hard, and things happen. This is why it's interesting to watch people do these things live, and we start to feel, oh, okay, these problems happen to me. Good, they happen to Rich too. Okay, I'm not the only one that has these problems. Contrived's asking about being in the right folder. He's could just say confirm the folder. Maybe a dumb question, he says, or Contrived says, but I don't know that it is one.
Not a dumb question, but we are in the we're in the project where the main, or we're in the folder where the main project is.
Right. That makes sense.
We're good there.
Did you reboot your machine? There's always
Have you tried turning it off and on again?
Yeah, right.
We certainly could sit through that, right?
Well, we would lose the stream if you did that, but that's another story.
No, it's the other machine. You're fine.
Oh, yeah, right.
Oh, man.
Yes, Chops. Agreed, Chops.
What did you say?
Chops says the only dumb question is the one that was never asked. I'll see if I can put that up on the... the screen is not working right for the featured chat. All right. Oh, well.
No, I saw it. I see.
It's behind. Yeah, it's behind. So, I'll clear that out. I think there was a lot of scrambling to get these screens set up for today's show, which is kind of weird, but
well, this would be a good time to ask in the chat if anyone has seen this error before and has run through it.
And including anyone watching later in YouTube, in the future, maybe they could come back in time and tell us how to fix this. But yeah, sure. If anybody is in the chat and has any thoughts on this, appreciate Contrive's couple of suggestions there. But this could be what's going on here. Rich, is this a demo I don't remember, maybe you said this. Is this a demo you've walked through before at all? You might have a copy. Do you have another copy of it?
I do. I did it in C#. I was trying to do it in JavaScript.
Okay. Just wondering if that's something we could take advantage of. I don't know.
Yeah, let's look at the C# version, just so we can look at some code. I appreciate you trying to get the node functions version going there.
This just further deepens my dislike of Node in JavaScript.
It's probably something, so here's the thing. I have been working for a little while on moving an on-premise site to app service. And so just so everybody here knows, I spent a couple weeks on that, and I would say that about 50% of that was being stuck on the same problem. And then once it was finally revealed to me what it was, I felt really dumb. I was like, oh, that should have been obvious that I would need connectivity to DNS in order to resolve other servers.
Yeah.
So, it's things, we'll think about it later, Rich, and it'll be like, oh, yeah. So,
I'll do this once the stream ends and it'll run fine.
Oh, yeah. Or you're taking a shower and all of a sudden you go like, what? There it is. This is one of the reasons why people say is a good strategy when you're stuck on something is to take a break, to walk away from it. 3 hours into it, you're probably not going to keep beating it to death. You know, it's like walk away and clear your head. And one of those other threads that are running in the back of the processor in your brain figures it out, you know, when you've given it the bandwidth to,
So in the C# version of the project, you created that negotiate CS.
Yep. Yes. So.
And was that something you did with command line, or was that in the tooling? Like, you don't have to do it again, but just, I thought earlier you were entering it in the Visual Studio Code tooling, like maybe it was part of the extension.
Yeah, so it was not. So you can see that command runs here in the C# version. Go figure. So when we think about what we were doing on the JavaScript side, we basically were trying to say, hey, let's create a new function. In this case, it is a function that is called negotiate, and we gave it a namespace, or at least I did. There's a function name, so this is what's you're going to use to call it. So it'll be whatever our function name is /API/negotiate, and then what this is going to do is it knows functions have inputs and output bindings, and that's what makes them really great. And that I can have something, a variable here, a general variable, in this case request, and it is going to, or variables REQ, and it's going to have an object type of HTTP request. So our function is going to take as an input an HTTP trigger, so that API endpoint. But the outputs also have bindings to them. So in this case, we're going to bind to SignalR, and we're going to. That's why we needed that package, because that package gives us all of the objects that we need to talk to SignalR and make our connection.
So if I understand this correctly, this is an Azure function.
Yep.
But
it is a yes. Yep.
I'm sorry. I was going to try to put it together what I'm seeing.
Go for it.
So, but because of these extensions, we're getting more than just the HTTP trigger and the HTTP request. That's doing some heavy lifting to also deliver us the SignalR connection info, so that we can interact with SignalR from right in here.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Do you want to see that?
Like theoretically, you could just do this from an Azure function, but it would be there's probably some like glue involved, and this is just like, hey, I'm done. It's passed in as a parameter of your function. Great, awesome.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, Rich. Before you move on from that screen, I've done some Azure functions. Been a little while. You mentioned that the HTTP there's a trigger, okay, and then there was input and output bindings. You said
yes.
And I thought you said the SignalR connection info is an output binding, or is that an input binding? That's an out. So how do you know which something is an input or an output binding by looking at it? Is it the order they're in or something like that, or
no?
Or is it just the type of? Because I've done some of these and I don't remember specifying. Is it just that's the way? It's
you
the
can only
object
have,
type.
It's not the object type. So. There is typically, and I'm trying to remember.
So I'm looking at your typical Azure function right now in the docs, and you get past an HTTP request, and you get past a logger, and that's all you get past.
Right, because every function needs a trigger, right? I need some way of kicking this off. And so at the bare minimum, I need that.
And then you return a task of iAction result. But it looks to me like this particular Azure function, because it's coming from this extension, this Azure Web Jobs extension for SignalR service, it's already kind of said like, well, look, I'm still going to give you the logger, I'm still going to give you the request, but I'm also going to pass along to you some SignalR connection info that I take it we now have the opportunity to interact with, modify, and then return, and that's what you're going to show us, because I don't, at least, or I think.
Yeah, and part of the reason, Andy, that we have that as an output, right? We're saying return that, but this is just like any other method, right? Whether it's public, private, this one's static, but here's the type that we're returning, and obviously that's just the function name. So the type that we're going to return is a SignalR info.
Yeah, that's true.
Just because I have a trigger I could also still have, if I wanted to, and I think it goes, and I'm just kind of, we'll do pseudocode on this, but I could do something where I could also have an input of blob storage, right? And maybe I could pass in a reference to a file in blob storage that got, that created this trigger that kicked off that trigger too, right? So there's that kind of capability. So you can have a trigger and then inputs and outputs essentially for binding.
Okay.
Right. So like what we're dealing with here, am I right in saying that we're dealing with these SignalR service bindings that are designed for Azure functions? Like that's kind of what we're working on. And it's an I don't want to say it wrong, but instead of just handing you Azure functions and saying, okay, figure it out, it's like, look, we've done some heavy lifting. You know, we've figured out how to give you an HTTP trigger and then also supply you the SignalR information so that you can interact with that.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, that's kind of what that SignalR service is trying to do, right? What can we do to make it easier to make the real-time web communication happen for your app?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at some other samples now. Really interesting. Okay.
And that was kind of how I put those together. There was a GitHub sample because this, like I said, this is the C# version that goes different from the one that we were doing, but there's also our messages endpoint. So with this one here, we're going to take in as part of an HTTP post that an object that's a message, and that will essentially be returned out to the appropriate SignalR hub, in this case the chat hub, and then basically just replaying that message out to, I believe it sends it out to all of the people who are subscribed to that chat hub, as opposed to a specific person.
Yeah, like that's really different from my point of view. So interesting. SignalR messages add a sync. Is that because, is there a hub somewhere else that we haven't seen yet?
There is, well, no, the hub would be in the SignalR service.
Right, but there's no code there.
There's no code there.
Okay. You would go define a hub named chat, I'm guessing.
I don't. I don't think.
No, it's fine if you don't. Because see, here's the problem: is I'm bringing my SignalR thinking, right?
Oh, rightly so. Yeah. So. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, we didn't have to do any other configuration inside of here. So.
Okay. Real Japan's here. Hello, Real Japan.
Welcome.
Another viewer back. Nice to see you.
And the other thing we'll show, just because it's here too, is this. So this is, and some of this may start to look a little more familiar, Chris, with the, being SignalR from the web side of things, right? So we're basically coming through here, and we've got a connection to, in this case, we were running it locally. So this was where our Azure function would run here locally on my machine. It's basically going through and saying if to see if it's local, see if we're authenticated, and if so, present the appropriate components in the web page. But then also, if we're not authenticated, which we aren't when the page first loads, let's go ahead and see if we can connect this person up into that environment and get a authorization token back from the Azure function that we've created. And then once we do that, then we can now have everything wired up so that we can send messages to through the SignalR hub service, because we've got a connection token essentially to that service. So that this code is fortunately not code I had to write, but it was all code that was basically provided, and it's just kind of taken as is, just replacing this the string variable here. But
okay, yeah.
Now, what should happen is, while we've got this here locally, I would probably the next thing to do is probably get this thing up into Azure, and this way we can have it essentially run up in that location.
Okay.
While you're doing that, right-click publish.
Yeah.
Everybody's favorite command, right? Or we're going to go ahead and build out a pipeline. I assume we're not doing that today, right? So
we can save that for another show. But I will. Do
Is there any emulation so that you can test this before you start publishing stuff?
You can do functions, right?
Well, what about the SignalR side of it?
Well, yeah, because we're talking. So we in our here in this location here, I've already gone ahead and grabbed that's SignalR service endpoint.
Okay. Yeah.
So I got this wired up to talk to it. So let's go ahead and do that.
So even when you were working locally, it was still going out to Azure SignalR service.
Yes.
When I say locally, I mean working on the function locally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yep.
Maybe it might be better if we do this. You can see the outputs. There we go.
All right. Which we need a little music right now, like, ba-dum, bum, bum, ba-dum, bum, bum.
Is that how it goes?
Yeah, that's how it goes. Yeah, thanks.
Pretty good.
That's the building theme.
I don't like silence. I have an issue with that. Like when there's a pause, I'm like, uh-oh. And that's why I start to filibuster or I play a little music or something. Dead air is
you could bring your guitar and play build music.
It's in the same with you. Go over
like dun 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 dun, and then if it fails,
yeah. Well,
seeds. Dun 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 dun. I'm more playing like.
Are you guys hearing my sound effects or?
Yeah, but it could be like dynamic build music. So like it's building up and then it's ready to either crash down or celebrate.
Celebrate.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
not going to play any copyrighted music, especially with what's going on Twitch. So, but yeah, see, look, I think we're onto something. A Visual Studio extension, like the Real Japan says, we should have Mads on the show and say we want to build a Visual Studio extension that chooses bits of music to play during compilation. And it detects that it's going to the compilation's still going. So it plays the music again that keeps building and building. And then it gets the result of the compilation. And if you're in C++, it just gives up early because some semicolon's going to ruin everything anyway. But
no matter what, yeah.
Yeah, but if you're in JavaScript, it just goes like, I don't know, because it's all going to run. You don't know if it's going to work. But you know it's going to run. And then if it's in a other compiled language, it crashes and.
Well, it would be cool, right? So if we were back in the olden times, when people used to go to offices and work in the same room, and you have developers, you have a pile of them. Well, when it build fails, it would play out loud music, and the whole room would know that your build failed, and which for me would be every 30 seconds because I'm not the kind to double check. I just hit build all the time. We're so spoiled that we just hit build all the time to find out if it's okay.
I thought that Fritz had built something, and there it is.
Yeah, it's already done. So
where did you find this?
We know Fritz.
Where'd you hear that Fritz made it? What am I missing?
You see my screen, right?
Oh, on yours? Oh no, I'm sorry. I was looking at the chat.
Oh, okay.
I think something from the chat. Oh, epic build music. Okay. Good old Fritz coming to the rescue.
That was one of the first things I think he did on stream.
Mads on the show, Mads Christensen.
Yeah,
who streams every week for himself writing Visual Studio extensions. I'm pretty sure he does it.
Yeah,
All right.
dunce cap. Right. There you go. Break the
So
build.
how's
You
that?
gotta get
How's the build going here? Or
punished.
is it done? Or
Build's ready. Yep. So we got our
Oh, okay.
API here, negotiate. Sorry, I got sidetracked
Someone
because
had to
somebody
bring
had a great idea
this
about build
broke the
music.
build. Man, I might not be very productive there. Because I might just be like, forget it. I feel like donuts tomorrow. I'm going to code myself up a dozen Boston cream filled donuts.
Oh, you mean you're gonna just break the build and then get some donuts
Yeah.
on purpose?
There's that old Dilbert. Oh, man. If I could find the Dilbert comic where the boss says that there's going to be a bug bounty program, and for every bug that they fix, they'll get money. And the developers were like, well, why don't we just start writing up bugs and then fixing them later? And one of them says, see you later, boys. I'm going to code myself up a minivan. I can't remember that one, but it's a classic.
That is great. Yeah. Bug bounties.
So in the end, we have ourselves a access token to talk to our service. And this is,
So your JavaScript front end has got to get an access token. Okay.
Yep.
Is that what negotiate was for?
Yep.
Gotcha.
And we can take this and go over to our favorite.
So now that I see what it's done, can we look at the negotiate method again?
Yeah.
Because I don't know about everyone else, but for me, sometimes I look at code and I go, okay, I guess I see what it's doing, but now I've actually seen what it's done.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. That's a good
bring
idea.
that back up.
Just the right.
So, okay, because here's what confused me the first time. It said negotiating connection information, and then it just returns connection info. Like, what did it do?
It doesn't do anything.
Yeah. Okay.
It doesn't seem to do anything.
It doesn't seem to, yeah, but it's because of it's okay. Let's put it this way. Yeah. Here, it doesn't seem to be doing anything because we have this package here and we've provided the connection information in wiring this up. That's where the magic happens. So all I need to do is get that connection object and I'm off and running.
Yeah. So the package is returning the access token. Okay. That's cool. It's fine.
That's plumbing too, right? Like that's good that it works that way, I think.
Yeah. And like I said, we're trying to make that real-time web connection work as seamlessly as possible. So.
Okay. So that's negotiate. All right.
Yep.
And then a little bit later, you showed us messages. Once you had the token, I think you were going to show us a page where you could supply a token, maybe. And before I toured you back to the code.
So we have. Sorry, you mean this?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is just because it's a JOT token. You can basically interrogate the JOT token, see the various properties of that token as well as what the audience of that token is.
So let's show everybody. You're using a website here, jwt.ms.
Yep.
So here's a little gem where you put in a JavaScript web token. That's what that stands for, right? But we often say JOT, even though there's no O. The W is silent. Yeah. So here's a site where you can supply.
Sorry, is it JavaScript web token or JSON web token?
It could be JSON. It probably is JSON, in fact. But you supply that token, and it says here, I'm gonna tell you what it's saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I know there are many of these sites. This is one of them, and that's cool that it's just there.
Yeah. The cool thing about this one, because there are others that I've used as well, what happens is this token never leaves this browser setting. So when I copy and pasted it here, it never leaves my machine to return back the decoded token. It all happens locally in the page.
Okay, so all the client codes in the client code's been delivered to you, everything.
Exactly.
I gotcha. Right. Where it's possible, and I don't want to accuse like the Real Japan saying, could you use jot.io? Probably.
Absolutely. And I'm okay with doing that because if I go here, just with that token, I mean, that's why I'm not kind of obscuring it. Yeah, you could probably send communication back and forth to my
SignalR service.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. But that's it. We get the same information out of here as well. Cool. But yeah,
and it's possible this site does the same technique. We don't know. I'm not going to vouch for it either way.
Yep, exactly.
But yeah, just deliver the code to decode this to the user so that you don't actually, nothing gets sent over the wire. Nobody sees it. But in
Yeah.
any case, all right.
Except
So one of the things that was in here is that that's what the AUD there is, the hub.
the audience, yeah, that'll be
Audience.
specific to whatever service that authentication token goes to. So if it's an app registration against an Azure AD environment, you would have that client ID sitting inside of here instead of this URL. It's the audience that the token is for. So if you try and pass a token to a website, it says, well, here's my token, it's a valid token, it will check and make sure that the audience matches what it's expecting to be receiving, because it's only expecting tokens for a certain audience or a certain app registration.
Okay.
All right, so let's see if we can get back on track here. So the other piece that we can do is, and this, if we go back into our code, so we know our APIs are up and running. If I go back into here and we go into
Contrived. Good luck. Thanks for being here tonight, and we'll catch up with you soon. I understand the dilemma you've got there.
what's that?
He's Contrived is bailing. Too many Netflixers in the house, and the bandwidth is running low. You got to keep the whole family happy. So, yep. See you next time.
Yeah. So what we're doing here, though, is we're going to, since we have the API running, what we're going to do is we're going to show the live server that we have in place. So if we go down here and we're opened on the index.html, which is the page that we want to host, if we just click that, it's going to go ahead and start that service and bring us right into that specific application. Now, if I remember right from this, and I don't know that I fixed the issue here, but if I go into, if we do F12, you'll see that there's some errors.
Right. So this is index.html running locally, but it's going to connect to the SignalR service.
Well, it's going to try to. Right now, it's trying to connect. The first thing it's going to connect to is my local, the API service that we got running local in our function.
Okay, right.
Because this is where we don't have the CORS policy enabled on the service.
Yeah, right. So that CORS for it to run, so that it would basically accept your local host as the origin. Now, here's the thing. This file is going to get hosted somewhere.
Yep.
And where is that? Do you want to show us that? So I mean, I appreciate that. Like, we can work locally. We can use live server. We can use live server for to check out our index.html, associated CSS, JavaScript, stuff like that. We've got the Azure function stuff so that we can work on that locally. But both of those were configured to talk to a SignalR service in the cloud for development purposes. Now we're saying, okay, this work is done. So I still don't feel like owning a server. That HTML page and its associated assets, they're going somewhere, and you're showing us that now.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead.
Not going to a web app.
No, we're not. I mean, we could, right? I mean, you could certainly do that, but the web app is a server, and you're going to be paying for that compute power instead of just basically dropping a file on a storage location somewhere. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to create an Azure storage account.
Right. You could also set up a Windows VM and install IIS on it. And of course, we're chuckling because it's like, wow, what are you doing that for? We've got all these other services that take the server out of play, right? We don't have to worry about it.
Yep.
And this isn't sorry, Rich.
Go ahead, go for it. Yep.
Okay, well, this isn't a server app. We don't need the power of an IIS or an Nginx with some backend to run a language. It's a static web page.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And the only thing we need here is this storage accounts have been around in Azure since the beginning. And storage accounts, for those who don't know, blob storage file storage, queues, so messaging, and then also table storage, so some a way of basically storing table information in there. But it has to be a unique name across the whole Azure environment, because there's a URL that points to this. Yeah,
Nobody can have this name. I already looked for like LOL cats, and it's gone. So
that means I got to hit create before somebody comes around behind me and wants to further damage my demo. But the idea is that so replication, storage gets replicated depending on how you define it here. So locally redundant, it's going to stay in the same Azure building of the region where I told it to deploy this to. If we have availability zones in a region, you could store it that way. It basically sends multiple copies to those other different locations, giving you further protection if the server or rack that your Azure storage account lives on would be having some kind of a problem. So that's what the replication side of it is. You're going to keep it simple, make it locally redundant. We don't have to go nuts on that.
Yeah. Interesting though that you said.
How can you talk about servers and racks when the cloud is a magical thing, and we all know that it exists in the ether, and there are no servers? I mean, we're talking about serverless technology here.
Well, it is serverless in that I don't have to define the number of servers. Well, I kind of do here, or at least the location of those. But yeah, everything under the covers is some form of compute storage and network.
What Andy's saying is, for serverless, you sure have to know a lot about the servers. Are they on the same rack? Are they in the same building? Are they in the same country?
It's serverless because it's not my server.
Right.
Right. And that's what's cool about it. You see some, Real Japan says the cloud isn't magical, but did you see this question? Real Japan was asking about DNS settings, and then Mike Shea saying, "Is there a registry?" Oh, that's a joke. I think.
It's an interesting idea. Like, I'll just go consume all of the Azure prefixed names, and then people are like, "Oh, but I really wanted this." Although that doesn't seem to happen in the cloud. People just like whatever it takes to get a unique name. So that's what we're doing. We're creating a storage account. And while this is creating, I kind of was thinking in my head, I don't know if I have this whole battery of options correct, but like, here are the things we could have done. We already laughed a little bit about creating a VM and putting IIS on it, or even creating an Azure web app, which is, I don't want to call it serverless, but it's like semi-serverless because it's not my server. But it's still, you would still know the details, and you would know that it's Nginx if you chose Linux, and you know that it's IIS or whatever. You're using a storage account. There's also something called Azure Static Websites, and is that a different product?
Yeah, that would be a different configuration, and we can we can do that in a future show kind of walk through.
Oh yeah, I wasn't saying to do it tonight, but the key that I wanted to key in here on is you've chosen to use storage. Awesome option, but there are options, even more than we're going to be able to talk about.
Yep. Yeah, but I think write it down. That's another good thing to kind of run through as well. Definitely in the future. So one thing we want to do is let's see if I can find it here. Here we go. So in the settings down the left side, there is a setting for static website. And right now,
this is so easy. That's what's cool about this. This is easy.
Yep.
Enabled. That's it.
That's it. Well, a little more.
You need the easy button for this one. Yeah, index.html. You really need the easy button here. You don't even need that error document path, I don't think, right?
Nope. You're absolutely right.
So you could put, are you saying you could put whatever you want in for index document name and that becomes the default document? Or no?
Well, it has to map to a document. It has to map to some file because it's going to go look for it.
Sure. Yeah. But it doesn't have to be index.html.
Yeah.
That's what it says there. To me, that's the default document. Okay. Got it.
Yeah, awesome. Right. That's essentially what you're doing there.
I'm not trying to quibble with their definition. I just wanted to know that I could do whatever I wanted.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool.
And
I could call it Eat It Joe's HTML.
Right.
Yeah.
So that is basically, I probably should be able to Notepad. Paste. Right. So this is kind of where it's located. Now, there's nothing there right now. I think if I try and drop that in the browser, you won't see anything.
I think this is going to come back around to what the Real Japan has asked. So let's just see.
What has he asked?
Well, I was going to save it and let you finish. You put that URL in. It didn't work. Requested content cannot be found, and the reason is, let's play the drum.
Because if we go to here and we look at Storage Explorer, which is a way of seeing the content that is in your Azure storage account.
Built right in too. You don't even have to go download the Azure Storage Explorer. Okay.
Yep. I've already got a container. In this case, the container is called web, but I don't have any files in there. So, but if I upload.
Oh, yeah. We set all this up. It's like you set up all the configuration, but we didn't ever upload the files.
Yeah,
you know what's funny about that is
content.
I didn't notice. I was like, why isn't it working? I can't figure. I don't understand. Rich, you said it looked so easy.
Well, it was easy to create the static web site. I mean, he pushed one button, but you got to have some content, right?
Yeah. So now if I go here, this should, it gives me that page.
Okay.
Still not working because the course issue is still there.
Yes, right. So now the issue is that whatever DNS you've now created, that origin isn't being sent out. That's got to be put somewhere. Does that mean Azure SignalR service has a CORS setting, or is this Azure Functions?
Functions has the CORS setting.
Okay, right. Because we're going to call into Functions.
Yep.
Functions is like, here, wait a second, hold on, I didn't accept that. Okay, yeah, we'll see that in a second. While you're working on it, and it's funny, the Real Japan complains about CORS. I had several CORS issues today. It's always CORS. The issue's always CORS. I really did. I'd say after solving about 3 of them, then the whole thing started working. But he asked a little earlier. So let's go to when he said, I ran into issues when it came to DNS settings. So what I want to follow up on, and he can answer while we're working here.
He or she, possibly.
Yeah, he or she can follow up on while we're working here. Thanks, Andy. Is the site name that you've made, like we're just referencing it directly. So what I want to ask the Real Japan is, were you trying to use a custom, like you were saying, like, I want it to be the realjapan.com. I want it to be a custom location. And that maybe was the trouble you were having.
I want to get that URL, by the way, the realjapan.com.
That now that I said it, we should probably go.
Real Japan is like, wait, I gotta
hold on, I better rush over.
Custom DNS.
So the issue was custom DNS. I get it. I've had the same issue where like I've set up an Azure web app. Oh, in fact, let's talk about where the devtalkshow.com is running an Azure web app, but the Azure web app's got some funky name like Andy's secret website.com or something, .azurewebsites.net.com, .satya. And I need to custom that to our stuff. So I did get that working, but I don't know if it's the same stuff. The main issue that I had more was
I recall in static websites you can put custom domain names on them.
Yeah.
I remember getting that working. I don't remember it being super complicated, but I don't recall how I did it in the past. I wonder if I blogged about it. Hey, nobody's talking. You guys are killing me.
That name's not available, though. Yeah. I could make an offer for it.
What, therealjapan.com? I just bought it.
Yeah, it was Andy's like, I'm gonna bribe our viewer.
Yeah. I'm basically going through our chat list, and I'm just gonna go and get everybody's domain names. So I haven't done it yet. I couldn't get www custom domain to work. Well, that's tricky. That might be different.
I'm gonna take a look at what we did in our Azure web app because we may have to respond at another time. But we
I mean,
do
Azure Web Ops, it's pretty easy to. Not, I shouldn't say it's pretty easy. Yeah, I can't even say it. It's you could set all these things up with Azure Web Apps, but static websites are a different scenario. It's a different
You're right.
portal. Wise,
Yeah. Like all of the iterations of our show name, devtalkshow.com, thedevtalkshow.com, and www for each of those, they all work and point to the same place.
Right.
But again, to your point, Andy, that was Azure Web Apps.
Right.
So.
And I don't have the portal open right now. I mean, I could probably look into the one. If you want to know how to do it for a static web app, I can take a look because I'm pretty sure. Oh, actually, I'm trying to remember. It's hard to remember.
There is a documentation here. Map a custom domain to an Azure Blob Storage endpoint.
Yeah.
And it says get the host name, create a canonical CNAME record, register the custom domain with Azure, which I don't think you have to do. Oh, well, when they say register, they don't mean as a domain register. They mean, they mean that you, okay. So, I mean, the best I can kind of do is offer some documentation. And of course, the Real Japan's going to be like, of course, come on. I tried all that.
I'm looking back at the one we did. It was called DevTalk Static Storage. I'm looking at my storage accounts. And if I look under static website, let's see, primary endpoint, secondary endpoint. Where did I set up? Oh, this might be it right here. No, I thought it would be that. There's a core section here. That's not it. No, that's not it. I don't remember how I did it.
I know what you mean, though, because I deal with this all the time. It seems like every time I use a service, whether it's GitHub pages or the first thing I want to do is I want the www record to work. And then I also want what I think is called the Apex domain to work. Like I want them both to work. And it's the first thing I go for, and I'll lose sleep and everything. And I'll be like not even getting any work done because the first thing I want is for those two things to work. My daughter built a web page, and the first thing I did was as I wanted it to work both www and then without. And she's like, I just want to work on my web page. I'm like, no.
It seems to me like a great failure of the web somehow. Like, however this was invented or something like that. Like, why is this even a thing? Like, I mean, you think that www is the real thing, but it really isn't. Like you said, there's the Apex domain. It just doesn't need that www. And then it's like, well, what the heck is www for? And, I guess I kind of know a little bit about that. I've, taken the class over the years or attended the talk over the years where people explain these things. But it's kind of like, why do we need all this? Oh, my gosh. Feels like it could be easier.
Why indeed? All right. So Rich isn't sharing his screen, and I think it could be. Oh, I was gonna say maybe there's like a secret on screen, an Azure secret.
No, I was letting you guys talk.
We were all gonna spend a bunch of money on his account. So there was a second method, and you've got that one up there, and this is the one that relays the messages, basically.
Yeah, it does. So, and I'll be honest, what I'm trying to do is switch up between what they're doing in JavaScript because there's something they need me to edit that is not here in the C# version called negotiate function.js. If I go back over to what we were doing here, here's negotiate, and inside of negotiate, I have this,
the
which gives
JSON.
us
right. And function JSON, that's got nothing to do with the Node version of Azure Functions. Like that's a description for all. It's an Azure function description.
It's an Azure function description, yes, but this file is accessible to me here in the JavaScript version. And if you look back in this version, it's not. There's another way to do it, and I'm trying to on the fly see where those pieces go. Some of those pieces should go here. Some of those pieces will go here in the local settings. So that's what I'm struggling with now that we've come off of the come off of the C# or the JavaScript path and have to move this up into Azure. So yeah, so that was why I went to this screen, because I'm kind of struggling around trying to put those pieces together, and that maybe, given that we are hour and a half into the show at this point, maybe that is we come back and show the finished cake next week.
Pull it out of the oven.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, we tried some things, and that's the point of the show. Like early on, there's an old video of us building our first pipeline.
Yeah.
And we got lost for an hour because in rehearsal at home, I built a web app and I didn't think anything of it. I just picked Windows to do it. But this was the simplest .NET Core based app. Like there was nothing special about it being Windows. So sitting there with Rich in the studio in Malvern, I even just said, I don't even think I told him that I did that. I said, well, let's just pick Linux because like who cares? Like it's going to work. And of course, that one twist, there was one thing in the Azure pipeline that I kept getting wrong is I was specifying the path with Windows backslashes instead of forward slashes like everyone else uses. And so it kept blowing up and blowing up and blowing up. And dumb me, I'd never really pay attention to the log. And then finally we figured it out and then looked over at the chat and somebody in the chat was like, maybe you should try forward slashes because it's Linux. And I was like, oh man, I should have looked at I didn't look at, we only had one screen then. So it's not like now where I'm looking at all these multiple screens. I can see chat and everything.
Yeah. I think we only had one viewer too.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. So, what I want to do is, so you've posted the tutorial. It was authenticating a SignalR tutorial where you authenticate with Azure Functions.
Yes.
So basically it's bringing together a lot of different technologies. It's bringing together authentication, SignalR service, Azure Functions, a static website, and this is all kind of falling under the serverless realm where you don't manage any of this.
Right. There's no slider to say, give me more.
Right. So you know what? Let's we'll get it working and we'll see if we have a little time to take a look at it before we get in to the show next week. I definitely want to thank everybody for sticking with us and having some fun, even as we were struggling through it. But you know what I think would be really cool? I don't know what's going to happen if I share my screen. Should we give that a try?
Go for it.
Okay, because we were a little. Let's do it. Let's see what happens. So I share my screen.
Hang on.
It totally blows up. Doesn't do what we want. Because otherwise, I'll just give you the link.
Hang on.
Yeah.
Stream Deck blew up. I got to manually go do it. 1 sec.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
This is
That's
cool.
right.
This is like, let's make a deal. What's behind Skype number 3? Behind number 2. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, I don't know why you need. You don't need to share it. Let's just go back to Rich's screen, and he can. We're back. We got
Your audio's
audio.
back.
Hopefully, audio's back. Okay. Sorry about that, everybody. It's just one of those days. Yeah. Woo. Rich, do you want to share your screen?
All right. So
Yeah,
next
why
2
not?
weeks. Next 2 weeks. Jess Chadwick next
Yeah.
week. local
Whoop.
Philly.net contributor. He's had talks on TypeScript, talks on JavaScript, talks on automation. And I have a favorite quote of his. I was working with him, I don't know, 8-9 years ago, and we were discussing specifically why it was so hard for us as an organization to not keep doing the same things over and over in terms of solving the same problem again and again the same way by remembering the same log entry. And he said, it's because developers have a high tolerance for pain. And I remembered that quote. And over the years, I've asked him to go back to it many times. And he has a lot of interesting ideas on why it is that developers maybe don't reduce technical debt, automate their way out of things, get bogged down in processes that we repeat again and again and again. Maybe it's a 14-step process to set up your development environment. And instead of anybody figuring out how to automate it, we just keep doing it. And then go ask the graybeard or or somebody who's been there a long time, what are the 14 steps again? And they go, oh, that's right, you forgot to fob the knob 3 ways. So
You allowed to say that on this show?
I think so. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's like a
knobs.
Yeah.
It's a bad joke. It was a bad joke.
So I wanted him to come talk about that. And then the week after that, we have scheduled, and maybe you scrolled, it might be, I don't know if you go to Dev Talk Show and then, or go back. The week after that, under events.
Gotta go to events, yeah.
I never go here. I'm always, here we go.
Is a show on Snowflake. Snowflake, the database that lives entirely in the cloud, had a huge IPO. It's a database completely as a service, and like you might say, like, well, there's a lot of databases as a service, but I think it'll be interesting to talk about this one. I'll be able to show you folks some basics for this and talk about a little bit about what's unique. You're certainly not going to come out of this being certified to use the product because it is a massive product, just like Oracle or SQL Server or anything is, but it's pretty cool. We actually know what one of our shows in March is, and we're working on a guest for after this. So what we're trying to do is build this schedule out so that people know what's coming. We can tweet about it earlier. You can go to the meetup and know what's happening. But that's our next 2 weeks right there.
So does this mean you have announced this event and we can just hit this button, or are we not doing that yet?
You can go ahead and announce it. That's fine.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. You should announce all of them. Right. Yeah. Put them out there. Let them.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of funny. Here you were announcing it, and it says you not announced.
Yeah, it says announce. Right. Was the other show announced? The previous one?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
No, I mean,
so
hey,
I'm seeing some response in chat. I love it. I love that some people said haven't heard of it. Some people said it's awesome. That's perfect. That's perfect.
That's what we want.
It'll be a lot of fun. And again, it's definitely an enterprise database. I'm not introducing MySQL to you that we're all going to go download and start using. But you may start hearing about this at work, and you can say, I saw it on the Dev Talk Show and I think I'm ready to check it out, team. And then they'll promote you. You heard it
or
here.
Announce you.
The what?
Or announce you.
So that's what we're going to do. I mean, I think it'll be cool. And that's what we're trying to work on, is having the schedule ready for you so that you know that you can come here Wednesdays, 8:30 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. That's the U.S. version. So if you're watching in the future, you got to switch for our daylight savings switches. Right now it's UTC 5, but we're just -5, but we're just a couple months away from switching back to UTC -4. So, little trivia for everybody. So, hey, hopefully everybody had a good time. What'd you all think? Azure SignalR service? What do you think, Andy?
Service is fun. Yeah.
It was
Seemed
fun.
to work well.
It worked. We got it.
I appreciate it. A lot of, we fought through this one. We had we took some hits.
Yeah.
And but I think we had some fun. I mean, that's another part of the shows. We kid around a little bit. We get through it. Great interaction from the crowd.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Really, we love it. We love it. We love those of you that are just watching too. Don't get us wrong. Fine with us, but we also love it if you say hi. And
and a quick shout out
question. Yeah.
Well, just a quick shout out to Piero72 who just followed us this very minute. So thank you. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Yep.
Cool.
So yeah, next time, you know what, we'll recap a little bit. We didn't talk about Philly.net Code Camp, where videos are going up every day from the sessions there. We'll get to that next time. So that's just the next reason to watch the next video. So thank you for joining us, Twitch or YouTube, present or future. Rich, thank you for working through that tonight. It is always, always, you know, the person that we set aside to say, okay, just run the demo.
Yeah.
Like, not the that's the work part of the night. So thanks. Appreciate, really do appreciate it.
Yeah.
And if we're both good, everybody have a great weekend, and we'll see you in February, believe it or not.
Jeez, time flies. Holy
Time is
moly.
flying. So Andy, Rich, really great to see you both. And so for my co-host, I'm Chris Gomez, and we will see you all next time on the Dev Talk Show.